Good morning. Thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate that. Per Adam's note, I'm actually going to ask, we are going to bounce in and out a little bit of PowerPoint and demos. I think I'm going to leave some time at the end for questions. And I think that'll be easier just so that we could try to get through everything we're going to get through on the call today. Based on feedback from our prior Power BI webinars, what I tried to do with our session today was to blend some of the business benefits and applications for Power BI, but also I know people want to see some of the latest and greatest features of the tool and the solution. So for our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about the power of BI, how to create an effective BI solution. Again, I'm going to do demonstrations throughout. We're going to bounce back and forth between Office 365 Power BI experience, and I'm actually going to do some building on the desktop as well. And then, as mentioned at the end, more than happy to answer some questions. And also for many of you, I know I've worked with you before, and I'd happy to talk to you about some of this offline as well. But first, I have to say what absolute amazing timing to do a business intelligence webinar today. And I'm going to talk politics, but not in the sense of politics, so please nobody get offended and jump off the call, but more in the spirit of data analytics and how much of that actually feeds into the discussions that we've been watching somewhat painfully, for those of you who don't like politics, over the past 24 and 48 hours. We have more and more charts and graphs coming out, like the one that I have here on this slide, where people are looking at early voting compared to several years ago. People are looking at data about projections versus actual winners. What I always find fascinating every year is, or whenever we have these elections, is as you start to watch the returns come in, they start predicting winners with less than 1% of returns. So how are they doing that with this data? And I think that's where a lot of the business intelligence and analytics pieces come in, as well as some of the discussions that we're going to have today about where those data sources are from and the quality of those data. We'll come back to a really cool politics dashboard in a little bit in this webinar that actually shows you how you can create a PowerPoint presentation using Power BI, which is kind of neat, and I bet you many of you haven't done that before. But I would also say, like, sticking with that topic for just a minute, there was a big debate in the Clinton and Trump election, and again, not talking politics or politics, we're talking data, where they had all of the polls ahead of time that were showing that Hillary Clinton was projected to win. And if you think about business intelligence and analytics, and you have data like that, there's two aspects to that. One, the reason we give people data and analytics is so they can perform actions. So based off of that information, they may have acted one way or another. Also, though, you think about the type of data that's going into the dashboards and the analytics that you're using to make decisions. And one of the things analysts talked about was the fact that all of those projections are based off of those lovely robocalls you get to your home and your cell phone that ask you who you're going to vote for. But then the key is, do all of those people that fed into those early analytics, were those the same people that voted? So how did that data get married up together as well? So these are very important topics as we talk about business intelligence and analytics, not just for politics, but for things you're using with your own organization. So we're going to explore that a little bit through this. So think about this. Within your organizations, you're generating massive amounts of data every day. But are you putting that data to work for you, or are you working with the data? And no fault on your part, but I still work with quite a few clients who manually are working with that data through paper tape, pen and paper, even Excel spreadsheets and solutions. And I've had some people with really amazing creative solutions where they have tabs and tabs and tabs within workbooks that connect to other data sources, where they have essentially formed their own business intelligence solution through Excel. But unfortunately, it's not necessarily fully scalable and breaks all the time, or is really slow, or if multiple people are going into those Excel workbooks, people start crashing into each other and having problems. And so I think the other thing is that I'm finding as I'm working with more and more organizations is that you're no longer working with just a single source of data. You're not just trying to analyze what's in your data, your ERP, or within PeopleSoft or any other type of solution like that. You have data coming from your websites, more and more social media data, and how important that is for marketing and understanding sentiment analysis and analytics from that space. You still do have some things in spreadsheets, you have some paper files, you have orders, sales. You may have an ERP. You may have a separate system for finance and for payroll. So it's a matter of then trying to integrate all those data sources together, which again, I think traditionally a lot of people have done through Excel. So the key is to start to get that data to work for you rather than you working for it. Which brings us to our opportunity that we're going to talk about today with business intelligence. So these solutions, and we're going to specifically talk a lot about Power BI, but they enable you to really bring together high volumes of varied data. The other challenge that we're facing nowadays is that, especially with a lot of these social media data sources, and again, things like sentiment analysis, we're not dealing with these nice, simple, clean, flat files or even CSV files of information. We can easily pick data off of tables and kind of bring that together in a report. So this is going to help with that, in addition to the fact that we have higher volumes of data. I've had so many clients lately where we're even trying to get to more real-time analysis with streaming data and real-time data feeds. But it helps simplify that information as reports and dashboards. We're going to look at some samples of that today, which really reduces the complexity of that and helps you discover the facts and do more real-time analysis. And again, I think the nicer thing too about a lot of these self-service solutions that we have today is that from an IT perspective, a lot of times they're going to help with security and connections and making sure you have access to the right data. But every time you need a new data field or you need something additional on a report, you don't have to go to them. In a self-service analytics space, if the data is available to you in the back end, we'll talk about that a little bit, you can easily make it a report or dashboard in the front end. And I've brought this up if you've attended any of the prior webinars, and the fact that, really what we're trying to do with business intelligence is help with real-world decision making. The environment in which we're conducting our business is so much more dynamic nowadays that you don't have the luxury of waiting a week or 2 weeks sometimes to make business decisions, because by then your competitors either swooped up that opportunity on the market or the market has changed once again and now you've made a decision and everything is different, the context of that information. So the key is what we're really trying to enable that real world decision making through gathering all of that data that you have available to you, all of those discrete objective facts about an event, and making sense of all of those, analyzing them with relationships and connections to figure out, what type of conversations are taking place, making them more action informed, comparing them to, like as I mentioned with the election data, prior data to look for trends and for insights and analytics. So that contextualized information then is presenting us with more knowledge, and that knowledge then we can apply context around to provide us with wisdom and understanding. I think some of the challenges sometimes when I go in to talk to clients about BI solutions, especially the end users who have been doing those Excel workbooks, get nervous and think, okay, well, if the tool is going to do everything for me, what do I need to do? Well, you still understand the business process. The BI tool doesn't understand the KPIs and all of that data that's getting presented to you. They don't know what to do with it. You're the one who needs to interpret that and understand the broader sense of your business environment and how you take that information and make it very actionable from there. The tools have come a long way where we have advanced analytics and we even have predictive analytics where they can make suggestions and recommendations to get you to that next stage. But we still need you to get you to that next stage. That has not yet been replaced by a robot, and hopefully that will never be replaced by a robot. So some samples of some business objectives that typically you're going to look at when you want to work with a business intelligence solution. Obviously, financial targets. Everyone's always looking at operational metrics about their organization. Things like sales and marketing goals, potentially quality levels for customer service. And then nowadays, I'm talking to customers about predicting future trends from historical patterns. So can we look at what's happened and try to get ahead of the next market opportunity, try to understand what our customers want before they're even asking for it. But unfortunately, most of the small to mid-market customers that I work with are doing more with less. Either you have less money, less time, less resources to be able to do this. I find myself often in the catch-22, as many of you have, where you'd love to bring in these BI solutions, but the subject matter experts who need to give us the requirements and need to look at them are too tied up in the manual day-to-day processes to free themselves up so that we could put something in that would free them up even more and make them even more efficient. We want to get information faster, as I had mentioned already. There's multiple sources of data, and then again, that quality of data for decision making, especially if you're integrating with legacy systems. I found often, people will move to a newer version of something and they go, you know what, I don't even know if that historical data has quality anymore. Maybe we should start fresh. So that's very important as well, and there's things we can put in place to address data quality issues. So let's go through some concrete examples of this, and here's where I'm going to start bouncing in and out from here and Power BI a little bit. So I'm going to start with something a little bit more general that I think is more applicable to most of your industries on the call today. It's just generally sales and marketing. Everyone really wants to look at things to understand what's selling, even if it's not a widget, what services are selling, what type of offering we have is actually selling, who's selling it, and what consumers think of you and your offering. So looking at trends in things like market share, sales performance, cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Actually, it's very interesting about that. I found I had an application not a few years ago, I think it was about a year and a half ago, where we put a business intelligence solution in, and they were able to start to see patterns in, they sold those defibrillator type devices. The defibrillator type devices come with accessories, and so they could track out upsell opportunities for those accessories every time they have renewals on the defibrillator devices, and they were able to do that through analytics, not necessarily through people, figuring that out. But also here, from a marketing standpoint, sentiment analysis. What are people saying about you and your product and your brand so that you can better understand what's selling and how they're interacting with you. So if I was to pop out here for a minute and I'm to come over to Power BI, one of the neat new things that is available in the Power BI interface is, you can see it's in preview, but they're going to have a home page now, which is nice because you can come to your landing page and it will have all of your favorites and frequents, as well as things that you've recently been into. So if you're lucky enough, or maybe not lucky enough, to have access to multiple dashboards and different types of reports that you're responsible for with your organization, here is kind of almost like your quick start where you can easily pick a tile of where you want to go right away from here. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways of how you can get to dashboards and analytics within Power BI. We're going to start with the home page here. If you haven't been in Power BI before, this is our little familiar waffle that will take me to any other Microsoft services that I have. Here's my nice little picture of me and my profile, and all of the other widgets that you would normally have, as well as from a Power BI standpoint, you can tag favorites. You can look at, again, recent dashboards, but I think the home page is really going to take this over, and then any of the workspaces that you have that you're working within. So as I mentioned, the first thing that we're going to look at is a sales and marketing sample. So coming into sales and marketing, this is our central landing dashboard for this. And you can see what's nice about this is I can put tiles in here for KPIs. So if I want to look at things like market share over the last 12 months, what's our volume and what's our sentiment, because a lot of times your marketing activities are going to have impact on your sales. It's really kind of a reverse funnel nowadays, where all of that marketing initiative should really be driving towards sales, and then your salespeople should be helping to close those opportunities. Seeing the relationships between those two things is really important here. But as I mentioned, what you want to do visually always on your dashboard and your first page is put key things that you can get a quick glance and a quick sense of what's happening in your organization. So instantly I can see we had a huge drop in units from market share here in June, and something I'd want to look into. But also I'm noticing this manufacturer called Purium is slowly decreasing units over time, which is concerning to me. Similarly, if I scroll down to some of the other panes, I can see that we have some industry trends and problems with kind of market share in general that's happening right now, as you could see as well, some of the predicted lines down. So between understanding that, but also let's understand the tool a little bit. So behind each of these panes of glass on our dashboard are different types of reports and analytics that you would put together to look into each facet of these a little bit more. So you can see I have separate tabs for things like data and information about market share. So I did see that trending concern here. Now I can get some additional context around here about different types of sales and different types of categories. I'll come back to category in a minute. I have a tab here for that sentiment analysis. So again, are people saying things positively or negatively about me over time? And it also groups things here based off of region. So also to show you just a couple of different charts and dashboards. But here another trend on growth opportunities. So these are all related reports that I might want to look at to further investigate what I'm seeing on my front dashboard. And sure enough, here I have concerns about that Purium manufacturer that's going down over time. So what's nice about these is they're interactive. So I can click on Purium to specifically focus on that and to look at those trend lines and any information related to that over time as well. And you can see, the heat map will interact with that. All of the different charts and graphs here will interact with that as well. And you could even narrow it down to specific manufacturers. Now, there's also an opportunity that Power BI has where you can say, you know what, maybe you're not great at making correlations and you don't even know what to ask about your data. It will actually mine your data for you. So maybe I want to view insights on the total segments overall. And it's going to go through and it's going to try to make those correlations and patterns on your behalf. So it gives me statistics here. I'm looking at total units by segment. So I have different segments like productivity, extreme, all season, regular, minimums and maximum. But then look, productivity and convenience have total more units for the East region. That's interesting. Maybe I want to look at that a little bit further. I can look at things like for different types of years, which manufacturers are having better trends. Urban has noticeably more total units for running year one, and urban and rural have total units more for region East as well. Interestingly though, now I can start to make sense of this because again, we still need people. So let's look down here. This Van Artsel has total more units for category urban. And we see that urban was earlier a little bit more important kind of in the East region and also based off of the first year. So see how you can start to make sense of this, and because it'll kind of focus in on the data, it helps you with patterns. So then you can start to make actionable insights about your data. So that's interesting on sales and marketing. Let's go to the next one, and I'm going to leave PowerPoint kind of in this mode since I'm going to start bouncing in and out a little bit. I know many of the people that were going to join our call today are in the more of the manufacturing space. So how can this help you specifically? BI can actually provide real-time visibility into your supply chain for more efficient and faster decisions. So again, manufacturing, you're going to want to look at things like machine utilization, because if your machines aren't being utilized, you're probably not creating widgets, and then that's similar to an empty airplane where you're not making money. How efficient are your processes? Obviously, what are your costs? Looking at things like inventories, losses, and cycle times. So let's flip back over to Power BI and let's take a look at a different sample. And I'm going to go and navigate to this a little bit differently here. Let's look at a supplier quality analysis. And this is a different way of getting your dashboards. And you can see here, I have a similar kind of layout for my dashboard, but I'm showing different types of data. So here I'm looking more at defects, downtime in minutes, and if I drill through these reports, now I can take a look at both, sometimes people still like grid data, and so that can be presented in addition to fancy images. One of the things I would think of is though I would want to know, any type of rejected defect types, because if it's rejected, then I have to either send it back to the manufacturer or it's caused a problem in my product. Maybe I want to go investigate that a bit further. And I see there's a lot of high defect types in packaging. The other thing that I see though in defect types of rejected as my charts changed is that I see an alarming trend where while there was a dip in May, generally speaking, 2013, 2014, I have a higher number of defects by month and year overall. Now, what might happen is as you start to do your analysis, we'll come back here to supplier quality analysis, you might not have a chart type that relates to the type of information you're looking at. No problem. Power BI gives you a Q&A capability where you can just start to ask questions of your data. And maybe I want to take a look at, as I said, downtime is important because if the machines are down, then I'm not creating widgets, not making money. Okay, so what was total? This is always hard while talking. Downtime. Oh, here we go. And it's finishing the sentence for me because it thinks for me. Okay, for supply. Let's actually do this by category table. So what are the total downtime minutes by category table? And it's automatically going to bring back a chart for me based off of, I see the worst by far was in logistics, but then I also see issues here in packaging, not as many in electrical materials and components. What's really neat about this though is I have a great chart. Maybe this is something that I look at all the time. It's not in my dashboard, no problem. Frankly, maybe I want to look at it in a different visualization. I like donut charts a little bit better. And maybe we have company colors where technically logistics should be, I don't know, purple. Great, this is something I want to see on a regular basis when I land into my Power BI dashboard. I can actually pin this visual right back to my existing dashboard so that I can see this on a regular basis all the time. And you can see that you can not only pin it when you go back to your dashboard, you can also create a phone view where you optimize it for mobile experience as well, which is pretty cool. So if I come back over the dashboard, unfortunately, because of all the tiles that I have in here, it went to the bottom. But I can easily, like if I wanted to move this around and put this closer to the top, you see how easy it is to add a tile to your dashboard. And then this would be part of your user experience every time you come into Power BI, which is kind of neat. Okay, so great. So we've taken a look at sales and marketing. We've looked at some things for manufacturing. How about the public sector? Now, I have two things that I want to show you in this space. One, education, because again, I think I saw some schools that had been registered for the webinar today, but I added and politics because I have a really cool dashboard that kind of shows some politics. But let's think about this again. Running a school is similar as running a business. I think people forget that. While you do want to provide resources for education, you still have a business that you're running as a school, right? You have academic outcomes. You still have a pipeline. You need to get students in. You need to retain those students, and then you need to graduate those students. You have a whole workforce you need to manage, and there's administration. And my goodness, does education and the public sector have so many government reporting regulations and requirements. So if anything, business intelligence and analytics and reporting is super critical for that space. But additionally, when it comes to the public sector, one of the things I want to mention is that while often you're blending a lot of the data that lives inside of your organization, many times here is where you start to go, especially in the politics world, to outside sources as well, generally available free information that would be out in the market, especially when I work with more like local governments. They're using a lot of data and analytics that are available about you as residents within their different types of communities. So let's go over here, and I think the first thing that I want to do, I'm going to go down to this way of looking at it now. I can go into a workspace for higher education, which should be something that even if you're not in higher education is fairly easily to relate to. Couple neat things about this dashboard. Once again, you know, we have trends here where I can quickly see enrollment by class level, which, you know, we have quite a few freshmen and sophomores, but they seem to be having a drop-offs in juniors and seniors and not as many students. So I'd be curious as to what's happening, why I have so many here. You can look at trends over time, trends based off of colleges, and you can see how you can layer some of these data elements together. Now, what's interesting about this one, if I was to come into, let's click down enrollment by term level. One of the other things people ask me a lot is they go, okay, that's great. I love looking at charts and graphs, but I'm kind of more of a hands-on, likes working in Excel person. Not a problem. I could take this exact same enrollment data, and maybe you like to slice and dice through it, so you can analyze it in Excel. And so what it's going to do is it's going to, this has been enhanced now, where it's not only just creating a data export to Excel, you can create and enable a live OData feed to this data, if it lives in Azure or whatever database. And it's not only just dumping it there now, it creates a pivot table for you automatically, which is really cool, and I'm so glad they enhanced the product to do this. So if I want to start to slice things, maybe I want to take a look at students based off of, let's see, class level. So it's automatically going to start to build out that Excel workbook for me to be able to work with. And I can do things that I'm used to doing in Excel to pivot. So now I want to layer gender on as columns, and I can start to kind of drill through the data that way. You can save this off as a different copy. You can start to add different tabs if you want to blend other data with this outside of Power BI. Have at it. But so for those of you that like to slice and dice, this is definitely available. On the flip side of that is, for example, if you are sharing these Power BI dashboards with clients, customers, people outside your organization, and you don't want them to be able to download it, you can also disable that functionality for people. So don't feel concerned about that you have to worry about that. The other neat thing, though, that I want to show you on this particular graph is that I've been showing you how everything is always really interactive. If I click on this tile, all the other tiles change. What you can do, though, is drill down to data within a tile without all of it changing context as well. So I do have a nice filter going here where I'm looking at headcount for enrollment in fall 2005. Maybe I want to understand a little bit more about nations and states. I have 255 people coming from the United States of America. Maybe I want to drill down on that instead of changing the context. I still want to understand enrollment student term level, but now I want to focus in specifically on North America. And now it's going to drill me into that specific set of data so I can see, wow, there's a ton of students that come from Florida. Alternatively, if I drill back up, I go, wow, I have people from South America. Where are they coming from in South America? Well, I have one person that came from Venezuela. And you can see also through this illustration, the maps within Power BI have also gotten much more sophisticated. And frankly, we have some clients we're working with projects right now where you can actually get down to a street level if you have that type of information within your data set. The maps will take you down as far as that. So it's kind of neat that you can, drill through your data if that's configured appropriately to be able to do more analysis on a specific tile of data within the context of the rest of the data. Now, here's the other thing that I've always been questioned on. You're collaborating on these as well within Power BI, and Microsoft is really big into collaboration. The other thing that you can do here now is you can add comments, which we weren't able to really do before in the tool. And so after doing some analysis on this, in my comments, I was like, wow, notice enrollment. And then you can reply to that, yes, it seems to be up this year. And post that so that you can start to have a collaborative workspace as you're kind of looking through that data together. Perhaps you're not located in the same office and you're trying to look at things within each other kind of in real time as well as you work with other people in the office. So comments is kind of also a really neat feature. And notice you can mention people to kind of grab their attention, similar to what I notice a lot of people are doing now within Outlook, leveraging that function within SharePoint, leveraging that function within Skype. So that is getting blended nicely into the Office 365 space as well as you look at this. So I mentioned education, but I also mentioned politics, and I'm not going to take credit for this dashboard. This gentleman named Tristan put this together. I show this to you, one, yes, to kind of still go back to politics for a moment and the importance of the data there, but two, to show you really cool ability for you to be able to take these Power BI dashboards and create a presentation to share with anybody within your organization. So this is an analysis of the presidential election of 2016. Again, not politics, looking at data. And so what you can see here is really cool that this person did with this. This is a Power BI dashboard. You can embed images, you can put in different types of colors. You can also, though, look how much more friendly this looks than, some regular dashboards, where it's using the same functionality as you just saw in Office 365, where you can still drill through the data. And again, I realize there's typos here. I did not create this. But you can do different types of things to kind of tell a story about your map and your data through a different kind of like a slideshow or kind of a PowerPoint presentation with Power BI. And you can slice and dice this and drill down in every different types of ways that you were doing before. What's interesting though is, so like this person is trying to tell a story about, the election, looking at what was, traditionally Democrat and who voted, but then focused on the next slide, kind of some of the key states at that time in the election, again, to continue telling the story. And here, not only did they bring in this data, but this would be a completely different dashboard they blended together, flipped back to 2012 to look at the prior election of Obama versus Romney. So again, you look at the same states, but you're looking at different data sets and different data on top of it, once again, using Power BI to go ahead and tell a story. Here then too, There's drill downs here for further insights. So, drilling into any of these fields is going to take you into additional data elements, again, working to kind of tell a story of that data based off of state type, swing states, who was traditionally Democrat, traditionally Republican. And then why I show you this as well is that, however you feel about it, this person decided to bring in the poverty rate and use that as another layer to kind of tell a story about traditionally Democrat, Republican swing states and how those mapped over time based off of like the electoral votes. And again, here I can drill in on the central region and it's going to focus me in on that data set. And I pick central because we're central and I think that that's most meaningful. Now, what does that tell us though? What tells us importantly though is I go to the end of this, and this is available, I can share this if anyone's interested in going back and playing with this, is where did this data come from? So even going back to the poverty rate, this is from free sources that are out there on the internet. So regardless of how you feel about the dashboard, it's only as good as the data that's feeding into the dashboard. And the election results are based off of these publicly available different types of sources for voter turnout data. So I think that that's really important as well as you look at different charts and dashboards. And again, going back to your organization, where are you getting that data from? Is it from, good sources of the truth? What do you feel about the quality of the sources of the truth? But even just knowing what data sources are feeding into that. I've had customers where we've gone into, oh, wait, that was the staging table. We meant to tell you that you were supposed to be pulling the data from the other table. Well, of course, the dashboards don't look right because we're not pulling from the right data source. So just kind of a neat example. And you can set something like that up to autoplay as well to kind of tell a story. Just another kind of cool thing about Power BI I wanted to mention. So finally, the only one I wanted to mention in addition to that was human resources. Because I think, again, let's go sales and marketing, pretty broadly applicable. Human resources, you have some sort of workforce within your organization. And staffing is kind of similar to sales where you have a pipeline. You have people that you're evaluating, people that might go through an interview process. Maybe you have a drug screen process. Maybe you have a testing process. And then you have people you bring on board. And it's very expensive to both recruit and to onboard new resources within your organization. So how do you evaluate new hires? How do you look at bad hires and figure out what the problem was there and not to do that again? But within many organizations nowadays, you have diversity initiatives, and how can you look at that data for analysis as well? So I'm going to come back over here to my workspace dashboards, and I'm going to go to this little human resources sample here. And again, here you'll notice this one looks different than the other ones where it still does have charts, but I don't necessarily have as many KPIs. But I can easily and quickly see hires by gender, active employees. We have a multi-generational workforce nowadays, and that has implications on how you handle human resources, how you blend teams together, the type of technology, the type of benefits, the type of perks people are expecting within organizations. And then here, we have region and ethnicity. So again, a lot of diversity initiatives where you need to kind of have a sense of diversity within your organization, and then active employee counts. And all of these, like I had mentioned, kind of have all of the information behind them. You can spotlight, you can actually, if I wanted to view the details of this, I can open in focus mode, and I can focus in on some of these different pieces and elements as well. And all of those good types of things, and export to Excel, just like I had been doing with everything else. So similarly, as we kind of go through these different types of dashboards, you have that kind of different types of functionality. And every one of these always has the data behind it, and that can always be exported. So actually, and I just wanted to mention as a side note, if you're interested in human resources and you do a lot of work there, and you haven't signed up already, next week we have a webinar on the HR portal, November 15th from 11 to noon, which is focused more on using SharePoint to help with onboarding processes and overall human resource management. So just kind of a note for that for those of you that might be interested. So, whoops, there we go. So a couple quick things. I don't know why that's going away. Let's stay with that. A couple quick things then, again, so we've seen some really cool dashboards and we've seen some really cool business intelligence applications. Oops, we seem to have lost Skype. Oh no, hold on one second. Rejoin Skype meeting. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, we've still got your audio, but just need
Okay,
you to reshare the desktop when
thank you. I'm
you're
like,
done.
oh, it completely just kicked me off. Hold on one second. Let's go back to desktop. That's very strange. Can you see my desktop again?
Loading right now.
Okay,
Looks good
thank
on
you.
my end. Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. I don't know why that happened. Okay, so we saw some really neat Power BI and business analytics applications. Now, how do we get there? And as I mentioned in the beginning, I think a lot of organizations are still more at a reporting stage where, that's fine. You still need operational metrics and to do understanding of what's happened in the past. I think we're moving more towards analyzing why things happen and root causes so that either we can change our direction moving forward or prevent things like that from happening or, understanding a new strategy. More so, though, companies are moving towards more real-time understanding and analytics and corrective actions. Predictive analytics is becoming bigger. Again, there it's as good as the data you're feeding into the models to try to predict out. I go back to the elections and it's, they try to predict who's going to win, but what kind of data are you feeding into that and where did that data come from? Because your results and analysis pieces of that are only going to be as good as that part. And then actually to the next stage of this would be, it's kind of like the pipe dream for many organizations. It's how we should respond, where it actually kind of gives you some suggestions of what you should do for dynamic correction. So what we need to do to create the BI solution is obviously define our audience, figure out what those metrics need to be. The biggest part of this usually by far is locating the data, building your data model, and then putting the meaningful visualizations, those charts and graphs in place for your audience, and obviously testing, evaluating, and tweaking. So a few quick notes on defining your audience. Again, you're still going to have people within your organization who need that slicing and dicing of information, and giving them tools like Excel is going to be very important. So I'm not saying a dashboard is a be-all and end-all for everybody. You need to know who you're trying to serve with self-service analytics. However, your executives or potentially your managers within the organization really are going to want that one-stop shop, that one pane of glass where they can quickly assess the state of the organization. What's red, yellow, green? What do I need to take action on? And what do I need to maybe drill into a little bit to get more details? And then I had mentioned higher education, but government reporting as a whole, if that's a requirement, has a lot of implications in how you get data, how you store data, and how you present data. And BI tools can actually assist you with that as well. There's still opportunities within the Microsoft SQL Server stack to use something called SSRS reports, which is more of just a static CAN report. The other two things, though, I think that you need to consider is making sure that you take into account your mobile workforce. So some of those dashboards can be pretty advanced with a lot of drill downs. Potentially your salespeople that are on the fly, we worked with an insurance company once where we did have some crazy complicated policy dashboards, but the people that were actually going out, the agents that went to go work with the consumers, had a skinny down version of that was available to be rendered on their mobile devices, so that they only had a couple of fields that were applicable to bring back data information about policies. Similarly, people like on the manufacturing floors and lines probably only need some data to be able to be rendered back to them. Additionally, though, we're using a lot more applications of Power Apps where we're providing forms so that as they're walking the lines, especially like in a manufacturing and looking at things like quality and tracking metrics, they can actually enter data in real time as well. That's going back to those databases that then have an impact on the visualizations and dashboards that they're seeing, which is kind of neat. So you've identified your users, you know what kind of analytics they're trying to do. Now you need to figure out what those metrics are. What are the business questions that you're trying to answer at the end of the day? I think this can be very difficult because if someone's been using a spreadsheet for a long time, they know what looks right and they know what kind of data they need, but sometimes they have a hard time articulating to you what those are. And so sitting down and figuring out what data-driven KPIs you need to measure, what are the vital signs of the organization is an exercise in and of itself to be able to get those metrics. So you've done that, now you can start to build, but first you have to locate your data. And does it even exist? Because a lot of times it's a manual process somewhere, and we need to find a way to usually replicate that process to either put it in a Power App, put it in a form, put it in something so that we have it in a way that's easily rendered in dashboards. But again, these might be multiple systems, multiple sources throughout your organization. And then figuring out also the quality of that data. Because again, the dashboards can be beautiful and fancy and have all the bells and whistles, but if the data behind them is garbage, you're going to be making garbage decisions, which is not what you want. There are ways of using SQL Server to put analytical checks in place to clean up that data, just to make sure it has high quality. And there's other measures that can be put in place too. And then also, how often do you need the data refreshed? Is it okay for you to just have a report, those dashboards ready for you once in the morning, or do you need real-time analytics? There's some considerations for that because that can cause some it's not that it can't be done technically, but it can cause some performance overhead depending on how much data you want, how often it's refreshed. And there's a lot of ways that you can make that efficient on the back end, which is why we usually create models for easy analysis. Usually it's not plug and go with one data source. We usually leverage Microsoft has tabular models to be able to build those out. And then we put our visualizations together and we test and evaluate. So really quick, I know we're almost getting to quarter till and I want to provide a little bit of time for questions. I want to show you, this is the Power BI desktop tool. You can go download this free from Microsoft.com right now if you wanted to go play with it. This is the authoring solution where you would build out all of those reports, and then those reports get uploaded to Power BI, and from Power BI you pick the different panes that you want in your dashboard. So this looks exactly like, remember when I drilled down into that education report? These are the reports behind them. But it's really easy to build out these assets. The challenging part is the data on the back end. Power BI is really easy to use. The neat thing that they've done in desktop is they've done the same thing where you can ask a question of your data. So I can say, what was enrollment? And it's going to, let's do by student level. It's going to bring back enrollment for me, and I'll just do the graduate counts here. So it can help you to start build out charts. I want to make this into a little pie chart really quick. You can see you have all of these different options for how you build up charts within your environment. You can easily then also build off slicers to be able to filter down the data a little bit more. So see how quickly I just build a slicer. Let's do this by gender. Come on, gender. And I'll put my little slicer over here. And maybe I want to drill down to female. I want to drill down to male. That doesn't seem to make much of a difference. And perhaps, let's see, let's look at a really cool map view for a second. How about let's do ID count by home state, and let's make that a map. Let's zoom over here to the good old North America. And unfortunately, that's not getting super big. There we go. But you can see how easy it is to drop and drag in kind of a map view as well. I've made this whole thing really big. Sorry about that. I'm trying to make that a little bit more efficient. The other thing that you can do that's kind of neat about this is that you can add images. So I think a lot of people always ask me about customization and branding. I just stole the Benedictine University logo because that's where I teach. And that actually gets populated then here on the dashboard as well. Let me try to zoom at you. Trying to zoom this over. Unfortunately, it's not letting me scroll. I'm having a similar issue with my desktop as I was when the Skype meeting died, and I apologize for that. But you can see how easy it is to kind of move around some of these panes. And then what you would do is you would take this, oh, there we go, that works a little bit better. You would take this, you would save this, and then you can upload this back to the Office 365 environment, which is then how you take all of these different reports and to put them in that environment. So it's so easy to build. I think the other thing though is Microsoft is a very collaborative community. So while there's all of these standard charts and graphs that we're very used to, they have some kind of really innovative ones as well. So this enrollment by class level, this is a cute little aquarium view, which absolutely seems to make no sense to me for any meaningfulness of the world, except for the fact that we were talking at one point to an aquarium about analytics. But you can see now the little fish represent all of the different enrollment by class levels. There's kind of a sand view, if we can get that one to work. That one doesn't seem to be coming back as quickly right now. But I've had clients ask too, they said, I want a map of the US, but maybe I want my logos all over instead of dots. Microsoft has tools where you can actually build out custom tiles and custom widgets about that as well. So the thing is though, is again, this, if I go over here, is a nice, simple, easy, single source of data. I have one enrollment table. More often than not, if I go over to my little finance dashboard over here, this is also fairly simple and not super complex, but this is the finance table behind my finance dashboard. More often, this is way more complicated than this, which is why, as I mentioned, we kind of focus more on using things like Azure and tabular models and analysis services to create an integrated model so that, for example, if you're using an ERP and you're using a different payroll system and you want to go filter by date, there is a understanding of the common date field between all of those different sources within your organization. So again, you can do analysis and authoring in desktop. There's a lot of things you can do behind the scenes in SQL Server, which is more of where we spend our time focused. And then you can use data with Power BI, both on-premises and cloud data. And the neat thing is if you don't want your data up in Azure and you want to keep it in your databases on-prem, it creates there's a tool called the Power BI Gateway, which creates a secure pipe up to Office 365 for you to be able to view the data in the dashboards. But then when you close out your dashboard session, it's a zero footprint solution. So it doesn't leave any residue or remainder of your data up there. It stays securely on your, on-premise environment. Although I would just say in general, more and more of our clients are moving their data to Azure because they know it's safe and secure up in Azure, because Microsoft has entire security teams that are creating safe environments up there for your data. And most of the customers that we're working with, again, don't necessarily have like full-time CISOs that are watching and monitoring all the security of their data on premises. Plus, then you don't have the hardware or the infrastructure that you have to worry about managing. But Microsoft also plays nice with a lot of other common tools, as I mentioned, sales and marketing. It's easy to plug into things like Salesforce and Google Analytics and Marketo if you're using that for marketing. And then all of these, like I said, can be rendered on web, mobile, and different types of apps. So we really do, as we're focusing on our solutions for business intelligence, we focus on the data first and foremost, making sure that you have a scalable and robust business intelligence platform, that you can easily connect to and access that data, that you have the right visualizations and end user access. But we also focus quite a bit around the security of that data as well. Not only the data at rest, but making sure that even in the Power BI solution, only the right people have access to the right data at the right level of granularity. And there's a lot of ways to help address that as well. So as promised, we're at 11:50, and I've shown a lot, but I wanted to make sure that I provided some time for questions if people had those. So Adam, I don't know if you had any in the queue.
Yeah, I've got one. First of all, I'm actually going to close out a recording. So thank you everybody for joining today. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then we'll formally open up the question and answer time.